This is Story Loom, a podcast that threads stories of culture and well-being. I'm your host, Mariam Vahradyan, a psychologist, writer, and researcher. I'll be exploring how ancient cultural traditions help our local and diaspora communities heal, connect, and thrive. In each episode, I'll talk to creatives and entrepreneurs who keep tradition alive while adding their own unique touch. Join me in exploring how art and culture help us make meaning, develop resilience, and strengthen community bonds. This is Story Loom. For today's episode, you'll need a needle, some fabric, and thread. Well, I guess you won't actually need those things, but you might just find yourself reaching for them after listening. Today, we'll be learning about the art form of Armenian embroidery, the different types, and how this quiet and mindful craft enables self-reflection and offers one of the most prized gifts nowadays: presence. Guiding us is Lizzy Vartanian, a passionate artist who moved to Yerevan from the UK and is keeping embroidery and its history alive.
It's famous for its unique look with its distinct crosses. In fact, it has been known as secret sewing, as you can't decipher how it was done from the back. You have to be taught how to do it. And learning it isn't...
That was Lizzy from her Instagram page, Armenian Embroidery, where she posts insights about the art form and even sells her own kits and online courses to share her knowledge with the larger community. In this episode, we talk about how embroidery helps us slow down, show our care and love for someone, and even cultivate patience. Hi everyone! So today we are talking with Lizzy Vartanian, and Lizzy is an embroiderer and is from the diaspora and is currently living in London and Yerevan as well. So Lizzy, welcome to Story Loom, presented by Kaitzak. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Amazing. So I actually just want to immediately start talking about Armenian embroidery. Can you tell us a little bit about embroidery and what makes Armenian embroidery unique?
Okay, so Armenia has a really rich embroidery tradition. Like a lot of other countries or ethnicities or groups, whatever you want to call us, maybe just have one or two stitches associated with where they come from. But we have so many from the different regions of both Western Armenia and Eastern Armenia. So I think that is really cool. And you can tell a lot about someone by the kind of embroidery that was done in their family. Um, we have a lot of different stitches, which are very different. So like Marash embroidery is completely different to Eintub embroidery. Like some embroidery is actually physically stitching, while some actually involves removing threads. Some is more like weaving. Some is very colorful. Some doesn't use color at all. So I think it's probably people maybe only think about one or two stitches being Armenian, but we have so much to be proud of and to preserve and to promote.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I've heard of some of these different kinds of embroidery, but for especially Madash. But can you tell us a little bit? You said that we can learn a lot about what kinds of embroidery and someone's family. What kind of embroidery occurs within the family unit. So can you tell us a little bit about the different types that you mentioned and what makes them unique, and maybe what do they symbolize?
So, like Armenian embroidery is mostly regional. So, someone whose family roots are from Marash will have Marash embroidery, whereas someone from Sebastia, they would do Savaz embroidery. These days, there are people who know all the different styles and practice them each individually. But, like, historically, like our ancestors, if they were from, say, garden, they would probably only do garden embroidery. Whereas now, younger people, like newer generations, they're practicing everything if they're lucky enough to be able to know how to do it and to um, keep doing it. So it's more about region than anything else. Like that's how it would have been initially.
That makes sense. All right. So nowadays, maybe people are trying to learn about the different kinds as opposed to staying within like a geographic region, which makes
Hmm.
sense. So, can you tell us a little bit about your journey with embroidery and a little bit about your history? Because you have a very interesting story and the different paths that you've taken and how it led you to embroidery. Share a little bit about that.
So I've been doing embroidery pretty much my whole life. My mom did embroidery. So my mom is Armenian and my dad is English. And I grew up not really around Armenians. And the first embroidery that I ever did wasn't Armenian. My mom did embroidery and there is embroidery in our family, but it's the link was lost. My family is Eintopsti, but my grandma was more interested in working than doing embroidery. She wanted to be a working woman, and in her time, that was maybe not the done thing. She was born in Aleppo and then moved to Beirut when my mom was born. But actually, the first embroidery memory I have was actually on the plane from London to Sydney, where most of my family lives now. My mom was teaching me, and she was getting annoyed at me because it wasn't perfect. And it's one of my earliest memories. But I've always done embroidery. I feel like for me, I think embroidery is like a very quiet, emotional, sensitive craft, I think, which I think is a bit like me. It's also very feminine, it's very delicate. When you embroider something for someone, it's normally because you love them, because it's a very labor intensive craft. Um, and then I guess as I got a little bit older, I wanted to learn more about Armenian embroidery because I'm Armenian. And I was like, why don't I know it? Um, so I've always been interested in trying to teach myself. Um, and then I moved to Armenia last year completely by chance. You know, a lot of people dream about moving here. I didn't. Um, and I kind of, like use that experience to learn as much as I can because being in Armenia, there are people from all over the place who come here and bring their skills and expertise. And if you show that you're interested, then people will be happy to show you and sit down with you. Like I've taken lessons with some women here to improve my knowledge. And I've kind of been actually inspired by other diaspora groups who really promoted their embroidery. And I was like, why don't we have that as Armenians? Because we actually have such a rich history and culture of embroidery. Why don't people know about it as much? Like, you know about like Palestinian embroidery and Mexican embroidery. Why don't we know about Armenian embroidery in the same way? So that's when I started making embroidery kits, and I'm trying to do more on the Instagram account I created called Armenian Embroidery. Like it's very new, it's in its infancy, and I'm not a social media whiz at all. And there are definitely people who know more than I do, but baby steps, we're getting there.
That's amazing. Yeah, and you mentioned the kits that you've created. Tell us a little bit about them because I think it's so important that you're not only, learning for yourself. I mean, you like you said you moved to Armenia recently and that you want to absorb as much information as you can for yourself, but these kits actually that I'm curious to hear more about are focused on teaching other people as well and giving back to people who are interested to learn more about embroidery.
Yeah. There are a few reasons why I've done this. Like one, because I think we do have books on Armenian embroidery, but they're hard to find, or they're in different languages, or they're very expensive, and they're shipped from all over the world, and it can be difficult. They're also often old, and like the pictures are not good, and it's kind of hard to read things. Um, Another reason is because people often ask me to make things for them, and honestly, I don't have the time. Another reason is because it's also hard to. I mean, people always ask like, "Am I would like to do online classes, but in London, I used to give workshops. But in Armenia, it's actually harder to do. But it's just, I think it's nice to like pass on the knowledge, like a small box with all the instructions and the patterns. It's easy, hopefully, the way I've done it. I also include not just instructions on how to do the embroidery, but like a little short like booklet about where the embroidery comes from and what the different symbols mean. It's kind of trying to make it accessible so more people can do it. Um, and I know that like some people, I know for a fact that some people like they buy one kit and then they do it with their friends and they share the materials. Because oftentimes people who ask me about things are not where I am because our diaspora is so big. Normally they're in the US, which I've never really been to, and I don't know if I'll go there anytime soon. Um, but it is like a nice thing to be able to pass on to people.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's so important to be able to share it. And I think people who may not feel as excited to interact with a book, which again a lot of us who have embroidered might be learning that way, or maybe on YouTube videos, etc. But I think that being able to create a package where people are learning and they also understand the symbolism is really
Yeah.
important. um, so it's great that you're able to pass that on. I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned this a little earlier, about how embroidery is love. If you love people and you want to give them your time and this effort, right? I want to hear a little bit about what this means for you. And you said that it's something that you also, it resonates with you as a person. So tell us a little bit about what drew you to this amazing craft, and why what does this also hold for what power does this hold for Armenian people? What
Mm.
does that love symbolize?
I mean, for me personally, I think it's just because my mum always did it, and my mum always worked crazy hours to support us, but she would always make things for me. She didn't just
Mm,
do embroidery; she also made clothes. I'm not so good at that part, but it's a very time-consuming thing. Like you wouldn't do it for someone you don't care about.
mm.
Um, and then I guess that's just kind of, I don't know, I've inherited that, I guess. Um, and then for Armenians, I guess it's just like a symbol of culture. Sometimes people ask others to do the embroidery of where their ancestors come from on clothes, or like recently, no one's ever asked me, but all of a sudden I've had three people ask me to do something for their wedding, which is really nice. Like someone asked me to do like a veil for their wedding. Um, so people like carrying on their culture until the next stage of their life, which is interesting because historically Armenian women would embroider things for their dowry. Now I don't know like the exact history of this, but I know for a fact that a lot of the embroidered items were specifically made to go to the next stage of their life, so it's important.
Fascinating. So that's something that was also historically sort of allowed people to transition from, maybe, from one milestone to the
Yeah.
next. And this was also something which I'm curious how embroidery is passed down, but I do know that, historically people taught this over generations, right?
Yeah.
So people, maybe more stereotypically, women were teaching
Mhm.
younger women in their family, and it was a skill that was maybe even seen as essential for
Yeah.
people to know and to pass down. So I'm curious, like, do you know how that's passed down, whether that holds nowadays? And in some ways you're also passing down that information through your kids and through your Instagram page, but that power of the intergenerational component, of course, is
Yeah.
undeniable.
Yeah, so I'm not an expert, but from what I know, it would have been passed down from mother to daughter. Um, there are a few Syrian Armenian ladies here who I do embroidery with, and I know that they all learnt from their mothers. But then these women do offer classes in Yerevan to people who are interested. Oftentimes they don't advertise it, but if you message them on Instagram, they'd be happy to show you. Like I know, for instance, there's a lady I do embroidery with, and she only has sons, but she's in like when Armenian girls ask her to teach them, like she's happy to do so, and she does it for way less than she should be charging me, right? Because and I asked her, and she's like, "No, it's important that we still learn how to do this, because especially in modern times when people don't have time to do this kind of thing, it's harder for people to pass it on. Like even my grandma wasn't interested in doing it in like the 50s when her mom and grandma did it. So now it's like even less people have the time to do it. But I also feel like if people know how to do it themselves, like even just a little bit, then they would appreciate it so much more because it does take time. And like people see it and they think that it's like not worth that much or they shouldn't pay so much for it. And it is like physical labor and it's a lot of care and precision. And I feel like it'd be good for everyone to take like one embroidery class in their life.
And you take a little stitch at the top of the line and you go from left to right, and always left to right because we want to cross the left arm over the right arm.
Embroidery cannot be rushed. It requires patience, concentration, and time. That was an excerpt from the Armenian Museum of America in Watertown, Massachusetts, on Marash embroidery. The careful combination of skill and presence is what we psychologists like to call flow, coined by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Through engaging with something we care about and challenging ourselves, we unlock a delicate but expansive state of well being called flow. Let's hear what this feels like for Lizzy.
I'd say for myself that it just keeps me calm. Like it's
Mm.
very calming. It makes you not look at your phone so much. It keeps you away from the screen for a little bit. Like it's very meditative. Like thing is I have quite an addictive personality, so I start doing something and I want to finish it as quickly as possible, which also you can't do. It teaches you to be patient. So sometimes I tell my mom, oh, I'm so impatient. She's like, no, you're not impatient, you do embroidery. um so it does make you be patient even if you think that you're not, because you can't rush these things. Like your hands can only go so fast.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think it's also just to add this like tactile element that exists, the ability to. I remember when I used to embroider more. Recently, I haven't embroidered as much, but learning a new knot or stitch and
Mhm.
just feeling it on the fabric
Yeah,
itself is so. Um, it does have this addictive element, but not coming from a place of trying to fill some void in yourself, but
mhm,
it's an immediate connection to the
for
present
sure.
because you're
Yeah,
allowed to feel it. It's somatic, right? And that
yeah,
really allows us to be in the moment itself as well.
for sure. And I would say that maybe it sounds a bit lame, but you kind of get a relationship with the fabric because you're working on it sometimes for a very long time, and the fabric changes as you work on it. Like it softens. And if it's a very big piece and you could be working on it in months, like you read, I've got emotional about embroidery before. Like if I've accidentally spilled something on it, I always get it out, but it is, it is, it is difficult. So yeah, I always feel like I know, like I can look at something I've made and I know how I was feeling when I made it, like what I was going through in my life or whatever. It like kind of talks about a period of time in my life. Just me personally, I don't know how other people feel about it, but I kind of like know.
Wow, I love that. No, I think that another thing that is stands out to me is that oftentimes we think about embroidery um, as being the object or the visual end result of what is embroidered, but you also brought up that the fabric itself is an important part of the full process and the final piece as well. So it's not merely about the thread and how you work with it, but the fabric is has a is a key component there as well.
Yeah.
So could you tell me a little bit about that relationship and also talk about a bit about what you were saying about your emotional state and the relationship between your embroidery and the final work.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we don't think about the fabric as much, but the fabric makes such a difference to how we embroider things, how it feels to embroider. Some thicker fabrics maybe might be more difficult, and others might be easier because of the weave of the fabric. You can count things more quickly or more easily. Sometimes thinner fabrics are actually more difficult. And yeah, obviously they do change over as you handle them. Like stiffer fabrics become softer. Um, And also fabric. I mean, nowadays, to be honest, most things I embroider on, I buy it from others, wherever, anywhere. But previously, things would be woven close to where someone was living or imported from somewhere. Or like I know that some of the ladies I embroider with, they get things brought over from Syria. Um, and I guess emotional. I mean, I'm just an emotional person. I don't know if other people get like as emotional about things. Um, but like if you're spending such a long time amount of time on something, it's hard not to have some kind of attachment to it. If it was something that just took 10 minutes, you wouldn't feel the same way. But if it's taken you like 10 weeks, then that's a whole different story. So I think that plays a lot into it.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I think it in some ways tracks your progress if you're maybe thinking about some time in your life, and that journey is also in some ways correlates with the journey of the piece itself as well. So you
Yeah.
might be thinking or going through something in your life, and when you look back at a certain period, it happens to be captured in this piece, whether it's directly, visually actually depicts that thing or not. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
wonderful. So tell me a little bit about your history and your background, because you talked a little bit about Syria, being Armenian, also being from the UK. How have your different identities maybe influenced your relationship with embroidery? Has that been a challenge for you, or maybe it's allowed you to have a different perspective? Like, what unique perspective do you have, do you think?
Um, I think like being diasporan but also being mixed Armenian makes you a bit more objective about things. Like until moving to Armenia, I wasn't as emotional about Armenia. And then you move here and then everything changes. um, but yeah, like I have family roots like in Aintab and Syria and Lebanon, so everything is a bit muddled. And I think for me, everything kind of just started with my family. Like I'm really emotional and really attached to them, but also I didn't grow up around a lot of family, which if that makes sense. So like there was like a big series of my work which was based on embroidering family photos of family members that I didn't ever really know. Um, but then I like having lived in London and Yerevan in terms of my own work, like there are benefits to being in Yerevan because I have access to a lot more Armenian specific embroidery related things, where in London it's difficult. But then in London, other things are easier. Like, I don't know, there's more textile shops, or in a weird way, it's easier for me to give workshops in London than in Yerevan because there's a different ecosystem. And there's diaspora who want different things. So, like, I think being a diasporan myself, I can kind of understand that mentality more than a higher stancing one because I'm never going to be higher stancing, right? Like I'm a half English girl who just moved here. So um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like identity is always changing, and I actually never expected to be here. But it's been, a very good experience for me. I wouldn't have done the kits if I didn't move here. Like I didn't really think about it. Like I had the idea when I got here. Been able to learn so much being here, which would have been very difficult had I stayed in London. So it's been good.
Yeah. No, and it's such a big, I mean, obviously moving to Armenia after living not in Armenia basically your whole
Yeah.
life is such a paradigm shift, and it takes a lot of interchange and flexibility to be able to adjust. And maybe there's no even final goal to say, oh, I've adjusted, because like you said,
Yeah.
it's always evolving. Armenia is always evolving. And I think in some ways it's really important that you have embroidery as a way to track your development and change over time as a human being in that space. So, tell me a little bit. So, when you moved to Armenia, what were you working on, and how was that developed over that time period?
when I moved to Armenia, I was working on a like a tablecloth. I don't know why I really like making home items. I'm a very homey person, and I guess I was moving from one home to a new home, um, which was based on a man's shirt from a village near Van, which I just really liked the embroidery and the symbols in it. I like the meaning of them. But I changed the colors. Like I kind of like to make things a bit brighter. Like traditionally, especially this embroidery, the colors are more dark, like earthy tones, blues, reds, greens, and I kind of used more pastel colors. Um, I don't know how people feel about it, but I think it's fine to make things a bit modern and use new colors that maybe our ancestors wouldn't have had access to. So I was working on that for a little while. And I guess during that time, I had the idea for the kits, and that involved a whole load of research and figuring out, like finding who's going to make my boxes and who's going to do my printing and doing all that in a new country and then setting up a business. It's my Armenian is horrible, so it's been interesting. Um, but it's been good actually. Like I found like a someone who makes the boxes in Yerevan, and my printer is like a 10-minute walk away. And no, it's been nice.
Yeah, amazing. I think this can be a challenge, of course, but also the beauty of being in Armenia is if you have an idea and you know some people and you just want to, get something done,
Yeah,
all you have to do is just initiate it and
yeah,
try to find the key people to get involved, which I found maybe living in some other countries, maybe more western or just larger countries generally. I might have an idea, but how to get it out there, how to
yeah,
execute it might be more challenging. But like you said, maybe with the kids, it's something specific. Maybe with the workshops, you're saying that it's been a little harder. So why? What do
yeah.
you think is the challenge with the workshops? Like, what's your goal with them, and why do you think it's been challenging? Is it culturally people maybe
I
aren't
think it's
as
a cultural
receptive?
thing. I think people are interested, but I don't think they're interested enough in Armenia to want to pay for it. These things are not normally paid for here, whereas I'm used to giving workshops in the UK and earning some income from it. So I feel like doing things here, if I were to do more, it would just have to be a free thing. Um, so, and I'm not in the high astansi headspace, so I don't know. I've spoken to other people in the arts, and they said this will be really popular. And I say, oh, it costs this much. And they say, oh, no, people don't pay for these things here. So, but I don't know, like, I don't want to say the wrong thing because I don't know how it works yet. So maybe I'm like reaching out to the wrong people, or maybe that's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, I think that in some ways that you're right. I think in general, just doing like having your own business, and trying to make your especially make your art, make your craft something that can earn income is tough because
Yeah,
those conversations are tough. I
yeah,
for me personally, I can't say I've quite figured it out, but especially in Armenia, I think you just need to I think you need to stick to your whatever you think is
yeah,
important and right for you, uh, and to be able to stand your ground and to believe that this thing is valuable, and it might
mm,
take some time, but I think that maybe it's about finding the right audience, knowing exactly the structure and setup,
yeah,
and being able to market it, which
mhm,
again it takes time.
yeah, exactly.
But I think that you're onto something, which is that people, this is a craft that I think there are people who are interested
Mm,
in this work. It's just about finding how to get it out to that group and
yeah,
get them to be, excited and wanting to pay for this as well. Because this is I mean, it's your work, and you
yeah,
need to be in some ways not, apologetic about it, which
yeah,
I get it's hard in some contexts. It's hard to have that conversation over and over again. It can
yeah.
really, wear you down sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of crazy to me that it's easier to do this stuff in London than Armenia, but I'm still figuring it out and I'm sure we'll get there eventually.
So, what are your like long-term and short-term goals with the work that you're doing? You know, you obviously you're working on these kids. You have your own Instagram page, which I'll include everything for people to check out in the description of the podcast. But what do you envision for yourself? How do you maybe want to evolve the workshops or try to continue developing it through a new angle?
Yeah, I would like to do online lessons and courses. I'm not very technical, but I'm working to figure that out. Um, then I would also like the like Instagram to turn into like an online resource, like a blog or a website or something more permanent than an Instagram page. Because I've been doing a lot of research and I've been making these reels, but I feel like it needs to be put down. Maybe one day in the like distant future, maybe a book. I don't know. Like I am still learning myself. Like I'm very new and I don't know if I'm the right person or it's the right time, but like sometime in the future, yeah, that's kind of what I would like to do.
Amazing. So, are there any collaborations? You mentioned that you've met some people and you've also learned from them. Maybe there's a way for you guys there to collaborate and work on something
Maybe. I mean,
together.
me and Kyle, who you interviewed the other day, we've been working on some reels comparing the symbols in rugs to embroidery because there is a lot of symbolism that is shared. Um, so we'll see. We'll see.
Ooh, I love can you tell me a little bit about the symbolism and what Lizzie's referring to? It's the first episode of Story Loom, which was featuring Kyle Khandikyan, who's the founder of the Rug Code. And Kyle, is committed to making traditional Armenian carpets, but bringing it back, and making sure that they don't remain endangered, and giving work to people who are weaving in rural Armenian villages as well. And that's something that has come up with Armenian rugs, of course, but
Hmm.
embroidery as well is very much based on symbolism. So you talked a little bit about the colors,
Hmm.
which you said maybe there were some dark, like deeper, darker
Yeah.
hues, and that you like to play around and change that. Which I actually love that you do that, and I think that ultimately, like you said, identity is dynamic, but art and these traditional art forms are also constantly evolving themselves. I don't think they're
Hmm. Yeah.
stagnant, and I think for us to make them relevant to our current, population and people's interests, we need to also add intentional and thought out changes. So I think I love that you do that. So what are some of these symbols? What have you been excited to see and learn
Mhm.
about? And maybe also, I'd love to personally hear about some of those colors and
Mhm.
what has been used traditionally
Yeah.
in
I mean, as
embroidery.
in terms of colors, I'm not an expert, but what I'll say is that a lot of styles, so like Marash and embroidery from Van, like they would use darker colors. Whereas Savaz embroidery, which is from Sebastia, it's famous for using bright colors. Like this embroidery, like it almost looks like a rainbow explosion, which is really cool. Um, and then Eintop embroidery is sometimes known as Eintop whitework because it literally is white and it involves pulling threads to create space, which often these days is displayed against a black background. So you can see where these shapes have been created with the technique of pulling threads. And then they would add other threads to kind of create a lace like effect in between the spaces that are left behind. In terms of symbolism, like each region has their different symbols, but they're often related to nature, related to fertility, related to like the eight-pointed star is seen in a lot of different regions, which is like kind of like a symbol of eternity. I mean, embroidery has historically been seen as a women's craft, and it still kind of is seen, although like men can do it if there's nothing wrong with that. So there's often symbols like related to fertility, just because they would be items made for women, like, and for their dowry and all of these things. Um, and yeah, like specifically like aprons that were worn in Western Armenia, a lot of the imagery in this embroidery is very similar to imagery that you would find in Armenian rugs. So when Kyle and I met the other day, we were discussing how like you often see dragons. Um, and dragons in Armenian culture actually are like not often seen as like a scary thing. They're seen as something that can protect us, which I also think is really cool. And that's often like an S or a Z shape, or Z if you're American. But you see these like everywhere. So they often have like signs of protection, I would say, like our motifs are like related to the elements and also have like kind of like a protective feel to them.
Wow. So I'm like, I love just hearing all of this because it's making me think about, Armenian rugs obviously are used in the home, and Kyle really walked us through the different ways that they are, what they symbolize, but also their practical uses. So, of course, embroidery is something, and you said, you make a lot of things that are home focused,
Yeah.
but in many ways, a lot of the objects that you described, like a tablecloth or an apron, maybe a pillowcase, like I personally
Yeah.
have revamped a pillowcase that was
Oh, nice.
tearing, and I not an Armenian symbol, but I embroidered a lavender over it and closed
Oh,
that, the
yeah.
hole in the fabric, and it kind of brought it to life,
Yeah.
both figuratively and literally as well.
Yeah.
So I think that some of these symbols, it's some of them are more maybe traditionally I know about, maybe some flora or fauna, maybe some fruits, right? To
Mhm,
like the pomegranate, of
mhm.
course. But the dragon is really interesting, and it's something that I think maybe people having this in their homes, on their clothing, etc., gave them a sense, like some kind of courage or boost,
Yeah.
to feel strong and
Mhm.
protected, because there are some elements, because I know, of course, since embroidery goes way back, and there might even be religious or pre
Yeah.
Christianity, maybe like pagan symbolism,
Yeah,
which would be
I
interesting
think
to
so.
explore.
Because the tablecloth I was making, which was inspired by a shirt, like the central motif is like earth, wind, water, and fire, which sounds like very paganistic. I don't really know so
Mm,
much about all of this, but
mhm.
like there's a lot of things related to the elements, and these symbols have been around for centuries, maybe even like millennia. So I think that probably is the case.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, those elements, of course, and I think that's evolved as well too, because
Mhm.
a lot of these art forms also track the people's history, and
Mhm.
and touch upon things like religion and loss and stories that
Yeah,
are packed into our entire collective timeline. So you can see how maybe these things have evolved. That would be interesting to explore as well, or what our relation the symbols might be the same, but our relationship to them potentially has
yeah,
changed over time. So that's so fascinating. Thanks for
yeah,
sharing
of
that.
course. Yeah, and I'd also say when you said about fixing your pillow, like I feel like embroidery is a sign of care, like not just love, but it is like caring for someone and like mending and fixing, like it is care.
Yeah, I love that you say that. And you're obviously able to capture yourself as well through this art form, which I think is so lovely. And it really, I think embroidery does allow us to mend, to
Mhm.
heal in some
Yeah.
ways. One could argue it is an ability to heal. And if I were to stretch it a little bit, I would also say the ability to come back to that present moment, which is
Mhm.
what embroidery allows people to do, is
Yeah.
also allowing for people to heal, right?
Mhm.
In the now, and to come back and be able to focus on what they do have, on the presence that is the only thing that we really have. I was curious about this for like carpet weaving as well,
Okay.
but I don't know if you know about this, but I'm curious if embroidery was traditionally done like as a solo craft or if it's done in groups, and whether you as an individual prefer to do it with other people or you prefer to embroider by yourself.
Um, Honestly, I don't know the answer, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a social thing, just because the act of teaching embroidery and passing it down to one generation from another kind of makes sense. Especially historically, women, their work would have been housework and doing this. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was a social thing. And also, we have pictures of um, normally it's orphans learning embroidery like in the aftermath of the genocide, which was also a communal thing. I mean, to be honest, I normally
Hmm.
embroider alone. I don't really have friends who do it. But when I do give workshops and there are a lot of people together doing it and sharing stories together, it is so nice. So I think we should bring it back. But yeah, just being in a group and also like sharing tips and tricks and stories of like what someone in their family used to do or what they used to wear. It's a really nice communal experience.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense what you're saying, that because it was passed down, over generations, it is inherently something that is social. And it also makes me think about how maybe traditionally people, women specifically, would come together to embroider. And, on one hand, some people were still learning. So there was the actual coming together to learn the act,
Hmm.
or the skill itself, and additionally just coming together to be together, to enjoy, to chit chat and
Yeah,
bond, to strengthen those social bonds and have something physical that you are working on, because it is something, like you said, it's meditative, but it can also bring people together. It's
yeah,
something that you could sit and even gossip or
yeah,
talk about the latest news and still be creating something simultaneously. So I think it holds both of those purposes, like you mentioned.
definitely.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So, yeah, I'm so thankful that we crossed paths, and you told me so much about the history of embroidery and what it symbolizes, as well as your ability to take all of this and to create something meaningful for people today, to have this intentional relationship with the art form, and hopefully to continue to spread the awareness and keep it alive in Armenia, and I think globally. So
Mm,
I'm really excited to see what you do with Armenian embroidery in the future, and I will definitely be following, and will be happy to sign up and support
thank
in
you.
whatever way is possible.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. This has been really nice.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anything so final that you wanted to share? Some like maybe key final takeaway?
I mean, not really, just to know that like most historical Armenian textiles, most of them will have a story behind them. Um, I think that, and then that's whether it's embroidery or a carpet or whatever, like so much has gone into it, which I guess isn't the same as if you bought something from a shop on the street today.
Right. Yeah, it's the stories that are packed into each one that actually gives them that richness and the fullness that I think maybe um, other people might not be connecting with, with other work that you
Yeah,
mentioned.
definitely.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lizzie. It's been really great having you on Story Loom, and we will definitely be following along for your future initiatives.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Story Loom, hosted and produced by me, Mariam Vahradyan, and edited by Andre Vartan. We just heard from Lizzy Vartanian, an embroiderer from the UK now living in Armenia, who wants to make sure that this craft stays relevant and in demand. To Lizzy, embroidery is a way to go inwards, reflect, and also to create art for those that she loves. We learned how embroidery was passed down over generations and is historically unique to different regions around the country. Today, embroidery can still help us cultivate presence and flow. Stay tuned for more from Story Loom coming soon.